Hello, my warrior brothers and sisters too. Welcome to this first episode of Sword of the Ronin, Breaking Culture Shackles on Men. I'm Mark, your host and your brother, and this is a podcast that you, my friend, need to hear and subscribe to right now. I don't care what your age is. I don't care what your past is. Don't care what your religion is, or even if you have one. I don't care if you're male, female, black, white, brown, yellow, red, or purple with teal polka dots. It don't matter, because we're looking to set everybody free. Just know the truth is sometimes hard to hear, but believe me, only the truth will lead us to true freedom. Only the truth. And that's all we're going to deal with here on Sword of the Ronin. This first episode is called Who We Are and Why We Fight. It's going to be sort of an intro to the podcast, a bit shorter than most episodes will be. I'm going to give you an overview of our effort here and what it's all about, what the goals of this podcast are. What we're going to concentrate on is doing everything we can to get you to recognize and then break out of the mental chains modern society has you bound up in, so you can start to live a happier, healthier, and more productive life. That's the first priority. The second priority is giving you strategies and tools to influence our culture as a whole while you free yourself. I mean, are you really satisfied with where we are as a culture right now? Can you honestly look at your own life and say, yeah, man, I'm good. I'm right where I want to be. If you can say that, great. But you're probably not being honest with yourself. I couldn't honestly say that about myself either. And there is no way we can honestly say that about the state of our culture right now. Our culture is sick. Many say it's dying. One of the biggest causes of that sickness is the shrinking number of men who live with integrity, honesty, and personal fortitude. There's a quote by an author named G. Michael Hoff that you've probably heard lately. And if you haven't heard it, you need to hear it. It's about the cycles of cultures, and it perfectly describes where we are at this moment in history, how we got here, and where we're going. The quote is, "Hard times create strong men. Strong men create good times. Good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times." Now, obviously, this is a cycle. It constantly repeats itself, going round and round in a circle, and history proves it. Look at the history of any nation, any empire, and you will see this cycle. And whether you like it or not, you're playing a part in it. Be you a strong man or a weak man. The nations of the first world are in that period of hard times that have been created by weak men and weak women as well. When we're talking about men in this cycle, we're really talking about mankind, which includes both sexes. Look, we're primarily going to be exploring the role of men in our culture and the issues that are affecting men. But my sisters, you need to be a part of this as well. So much of this involves you directly too. It affects you too. And having an understanding of men, hearing the perspective of men, and discovering that men and women are not enemies. We are designed to be partners is absolutely critical in hard times. So you're more than welcome here, ladies, too. So yeah, on Sword of the Ronin, we're going to talk together about what to do about the absolute friggin' mess our world is in, and how we can all make some changes to get ourselves closer to the place we really want to be in our own lives. That's going to involve working to become what we're supposed to be. Men are designed to be strong, productive, insightful, and intelligent. You're going to hear that phrase a lot from me. But it is a fundamental truth we all need to be constantly reminded of. I'm just going to take a second to get the business out of the way and ask you to subscribe. Also to tell somebody else to check us out too. We've literally just launched. This is the first episode, and we'll be working to expand our community after a few more episodes get uploaded. So keep listening, and very soon you'll hear about how you can be more interactive with us and become more involved. And engaging and interacting with content like this is critical right now. The people who are running our world into the ditch absolutely do not want you listening to the truths and the ideas we're going to be exploring here, because those truths and ideas are going to help you get out from under the crushing misery and weakness they want you to be living under. So who's they? Don't worry, we're going to reveal that if you don't already know. So again, let's use the rules of their own algorithmic game against them and get more people here to grow stronger with us. Drop us a like on these episodes, share them with others, subscribe, comment. It really does make a huge difference. You hear it all the time, but it's absolutely true. So, laying some foundations today. You've already heard about the main goal. The main goal is making you stronger, healthier, more successful, and happier. How we're going to do that is step back and take a hard, unflinching look at the things in our modern culture that have affected our minds, our bodies, and our attitudes, and realize just how they are designed to keep us unhappy, unhealthy, full of anger and depression, and at each other's throats. And above all, easy to manipulate and control. In each of these episodes, we're also going to talk about the ways we can fight back against this programming we've all been subjected to over decades and generations now. Those ways are all easy to implement just by making positive changes in our outlooks and our actions. That cycle I've already talked about. Hard times create strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. That's a real thing. It's the real deal. But even though that cycle continuously repeats, there's no set minimum or maximum time limit on each of those 4 quarters of the game, if you will. Again, look back at history. Sometimes when weak men have made hard times, those hard times have lasted for hundreds of years. Sometimes they only lasted a few decades, and sometimes the weakness was rooted out and the hard times ended after just a few short years. That's what we're going to try to do. Turn ourselves and our culture around and more quickly get back to good times. Then make those good times last as long as possible. Every single one of you has a role to play in that effort. And just so you know, this is not a political podcast. Politics is just the kabuki theater illusion that we are presented with to keep us all distracted and fighting with each other, while our real enemy behind the scenes keeps us all weak and robs all of us blind. While there are a few, and I mean very few, people in politics that are actually there to work for us and not just for themselves, you're going to find that most often I am one of those curse on both of your corrupt houses, guys, when it comes to dealing with political parties. Because when you take another one of those long, honest looks at the top leadership of both parties in the United States, both major parties in the UK, the people who really call the shots, and you're looking for integrity or honesty, you ain't going to find it, brother. What you will find is a nest of poisonous snakes with money and power. Some label themselves Democrats, some label themselves Republicans, and they all squawk and squeal constantly that they're fighting each other on your behalf. But let's look at the truth. They have way, way more in common with each other than they got with me or you, and they act accordingly. That's pretty obvious if you are paying the tiniest bit of attention. It's true here in the US. It's the same with Labour and Tories in the UK. It's the same situation in the EU, the Far East, every continent, and practically every nation. See, what we've all been told since the day we were born, that pretty much all the conflict in the world is between opposing political ideologies. I'm an American of Scottish heritage, so I'll use the United States and the UK as the examples I know the most about. It is infused into us in the US and the UK, also Australia, places like that, that the struggle is between Democrats and Republicans, Tories and labor, communists, socialists, and capitalists. All of that is absolute BS. The real power struggle that we are in is not a push between political parties left and right. That is not the true conflict at all. That's a sideshow to blind you to the real struggle. The real struggle is up and down. Those at the top levels of the social hierarchy against those down on the lower levels. Those up there at the top of the pyramid who will lie to your face every single day, who will do everything they can to make you mentally and physically dependent on them, and who will do untold numbers of people actual harm, all to keep you under their control. And most importantly, your money flowing into their pockets. Capitalist, communist, socialist, fascist, the labels do not matter because every one of those plays exactly the same game. They all run the same scam. They just use different ideological spices and sauces on the excrement sandwich they're force feeding you. But we will have to touch on the politics quite a bit more than I'd want to in these episodes, because whether we like it or not, both political sides are used as some of the primary tools in this elites versus regular people struggle. Depending on the situation, it could be the Democrats and labor that are the tool of the day. Some days it's Republicans and Tories that are tools of the day. More and more often, though, it's both of them at the same time. I often use one of George Carlin's most brilliant observations when talking about politicians and elites from both sides. George said, it's a big private club and you ain't in it. So that's one of the first things you can do to break out of these chains, guys. Realize right now that there is no politician or government official, not a single one of them from any party, that you should ever trust. And never, ever put one up on a pedestal. They are all tainted, at least to some degree, by the things that we're going to be talking about. Every one of them. And always remember, the vast majority of them are just corrupt through and through. Now, if you're one of those guys who says, yeah, Mark, don't know, don't care. I'm not interested in politics at all. Well, here's another quote. This one by Pericles. He was an Athenian statesman in the 5th century BC, but he was still a very smart cat. He famously said, if you are not interested in politics, politics is still interested in you. That was true 2,500 years ago in Greece, and it's just as true in the 21st century, all over the world. What Pericles was getting at was this. Even if somebody chooses not to engage with or be interested in politics, political decisions and policies still have a huge impact on their lives. So whether you're actively involved or interested in politics or not, whether you find it ridiculous and distasteful or not, and I do, the decisions made by these politicians and governments shape your rights, your freedoms, and your opportunities. At this time in history, those political decisions are overwhelmingly taking away your rights, robbing you of your freedoms, and making sure you have fewer and fewer opportunities every day. I don't care which political party you're a fan of or who mommy and daddy and grandma and grandpa always voted for. They are all ALL doing this to you because you ain't in their club. Don't worry. I'm not trying to blackpill all of you right from the start. Remember, this show is about how we overcome this crap, become stronger, and end the bad times. And it's about why there is hope for all of us. There's going to be a lot of positive coming down the pike to counter all of the negative, because I'd rather light a torch than just curse your darkness. We're going to be making this better together. Okay, so what's this whole Ronin thing about? I'm glad you asked. When I was thinking about possible titles for the podcast, I kept mulling over a couple of quotes by a gentleman named Miyamoto Musashi. He lived in Japan in the late 1500s and the early 1600s. Yeah, you're going to hear a lot of history here, but an understanding of history, real history, not the made-up narratives that we were all taught in school, is the best diagnostic tool we have to avoid destroying our future. This is going somewhere very important, I promise. Here are the quotes by Musashi. The first quote is, "There is nothing outside of yourself that can ever enable you to get better, stronger, richer, or smarter. Everything is within." The second is, "Today is the victory over the yourself of yesterday, and tomorrow is your victory over lesser men." Both of Musashi's quotes illustrate the core of what this podcast is going to be about. Using what is already within you or already within your capabilities to make you better, stronger, richer, and smarter, as well as to cleanse our minds of the garbage that was stuffed into them by people who do not have our best interests at heart. Musashi was what was known as a Ronin, a former samurai warrior who had lost his lord, either in battle or because his lord had dishonored himself. And a Ronin had to go out into the world. He had to go out on his own and make his own decisions about how to fight a good fight. In the 1860s, something very different happened in Japan near the end of the age of the samurai. The emperor, along with many of the Japanese lords, were allowing a lot of foreign ideas and influence to radically change Japanese society and culture. And a lot of the samurai, who had been dedicated to the codes of honor and the traditions that had built their society, believed that these new modern ways of thinking would weaken Japan and eventually lead to the destruction of its people. Many of these samurai left their lords and became Ronin, masterless warriors, by choice. They became guerrilla forces, fighting to stop the destruction of their strong culture and what they perceived to be a direct attack on their families and on their honor. Of course, the government, along with the foreigners and their new enlightened ways, hunted the Ronin down and destroyed them. The Ronin were strong men. That was not the problem. The problem was that too many weak men around them refused to step up, become strong men themselves, and join the Ronin to make a difference. And less than 100 years later, at the end of World War II, the total collapse of Japan that the Ronin warned would happen if their country joined in the unrestrained progress and ideas of the modern world, it almost did happen. Except for the atomic bombs that were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which themselves were horrific. They killed a minimum of around 140,000 people. Japan would have been invaded. A fight to the death would have ensued, and the Japanese people would have been more than decimated. And even to this day, even though Japan recovered to become a modern economic success story, there are many, many people in Japan who maintain that the rebel Ronin, who were ridiculed and persecuted for fighting to keep their culture from being taken over and changed, were actually right all along. These people feel that Japan did almost completely lose its identity and heritage. First, by being infected with the corrupting Western imperial ideals, which sent them on a road to senseless cruelty, dishonor, and crushing defeat. And second, recovering from the cataclysm of World War II only by forcing their people to become overworked, unfulfilled, and mentally stressed cogs in an economic machine that mostly benefits, once again, those at the top of the pyramid. So that's how I came up with the title, because I see a lot of parallels between the last of the Ronin and all of us today who have been led down a very dark path by people who are motivated only by greed, vanity, and control. We've seen the rise of dominant societal forces who care far more for power and profits than people. That is undeniable. We've both had these so-called enlightened ideas completely corrupt our governments, our business leaders, our schools, We, like them, have already been abandoned. And it won't be too long before we, like them, will be criminalized if we don't fall in line and go down on our knees to worship these rich, powerful elites. Thousands of people have already had their lives destroyed. And many of those have been jailed, by the way, locked up in nations that say they have free speech, that say you can go out and speak your mind, that say that they encourage their citizens to speak truth to power. Of course, all those nations are lying through their teeth about those things. They do not believe in free speech. They only believe in speech that doesn't criticize them. So welcome, my fellow Ronin of the modern age. It's going to be a tough battle for us too, but this time, I do think we've got a good chance to elevate and strengthen more men and to win. But it all starts with each one of us as individuals. And the number one thing we have to do before anything else is look at the world and ourselves honestly, unflinchingly. Because if we can't do that, none of this is going to matter. We'll just fall right back into the pit our elites want us to live in and eat each other alive while they laugh all the way to the bank. We're going to talk in upcoming episodes about how we're getting played. Many of you already know, but a lot of you, it's going to be the first time you've ever heard some of this stuff. You're going to be shocked and you're going to get angry. We're going to channel that anger in a positive way, not a negative and destructive one. We need to talk about things we need to change to break out of this mental prison we've all been locked into. But the good news is, unlike the original Ronin, we don't have to take up arms and be violent in this battle. No, in this battle, getting violent and acting foolish would hurt us far, far more than it would help us. We just have to win a cultural war. And the number one weapon in a cultural war is living a life of integrity and strength that defies the weaknesses and the mental conditioning our opponents use to defeat us. That is a powerful weapon. And the people who want to control and harm us fear it so much more than they fear protests or senseless violence. Because they can easily counter physical actions. They can lock you away in a cell if you go down that road. And they will. They already do. That doesn't really worry them, since they've brainwashed so many others that most of our society would cheer your physical imprisonment if you step one little step out of line. We've seen it happen. Just look at the news over the past 10 years or so. But if enough of us deny them control over our minds, if enough of us deny them control over our families, if enough of us deny them control over information, and if enough of us inspire those around us by our example to do the same, then they have no path to domination over us. All their slimy, insidious little plans will fall apart. Every one of you has the power right now to deny them control and to inspire others to do the same. It's already starting to happen. It seems like every week or so, another corporation or government organization gets caught and called out for the evil they are trying to poison us with. And a lot of them are starting to run scared. Not because they got caught, but because it's now costing them money and power. And because more and more people are waking up to how they have been abusing us, tearing us apart. Our fight is not woke. Ours is a true awakening. Those are two completely different and opposite things. Woke is one of their cynical, lie-filled tools of control. A true awakening is what will be our salvation. My brothers, my sisters, we've slept too long, and thieving burglars have been raiding our houses while we were snoring away. It's time to wake up and take back what they have stolen from us. We start by taking back the control, and I'm going to give you the truth you need to hear and the mental tools you need to get the job done in every episode moving forward from today. You need the truth because lies will never make you happy in the end. We'll wrap up this introduction with one more historical quote from another very smart cat. About 2,000 years ago, there was someone pretty important to a lot of people on this planet who said this. He said, "You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." Whether or not you believe in that person, there's no denying that that statement makes sense, that it was said in love. I want you to be armed with the truth so you can become successful, so you can be fulfilled, so you can find your purpose, so you can avoid the traps of misery that are laid out all around you. Because of enough of us come together to embrace truth and walk away from the lies and the deceit that has been hammered into our heads for generations now. And I'm talking men and women of all races, all backgrounds, all social status, all regions, all nations, all religions. We will change our culture for the better. Changing culture is the key. Can't stress it enough. Politics is downstream from culture. So is the corporate world. So are the schools. So is social media. If you can change the culture even a little bit, politicians and corporations have to change as well, or they cannot survive. And if we can move the cultural needle back towards sanity, even just by a few degrees, we will have more love and less hate. We'll have more peace and less war. We will have more freedom and joy and less tyranny and misery. Let's all get together and get it done. I'll leave it there for this introductory episode. Please join me next time when we start diving in, breaking those chains, and making some great positive changes in our lives. Until then, my brother, my sister, stand strong, grow stronger, and be the warrior you were born to be. I love you, and I'll talk at you later.